All right, Jason Rona back here at the Summer Indoor Nationals here at Hobby Action Raceway, Chandler, Arizona. We got a product out here, Muchmore Racing. It's something that you've seen on the internet, and there's been a lot of discussion about this product out there, and we wanted to show kind of what it looks like. You usually see the cars prepped in the pits with wrap the tires around the warmers, but wanted to show what this thing actually looks like, and we realize that there's a lot of action about this particular product out there. People like to talk about it, and yay and nay. There's a lot of up and down about opinions about this, but we'll show you today here what this thing's all about. And basically, it's a nice little contained unit made popular really in touring car racing, and for the tire warmers. And they've kind of adapted this here for off-road racing, and it says on the box 1/8 GT cars. So anything with a big tire, they've changed these wraps so that it can go around a much larger tire, and that's why they kind of brought these out and started using them in off-road. And to kind of rewind the story a little bit, back several years ago, I remember being at the Cactus Classic. We were running indoors. Brian Kinwall was out there. He's always the guy that's on the forefront of this tire treatment development. He was that kind of guy. I remember he had his little heat lamp set up in the pits at SRS, and I remember guys walking around and just being amazed at Kinwald's kind of his mindset and being a little bit ahead of his time. But he had a little drill press set up, and the tire was turning in his pits, and he had his heat lamps set up on the tires while he was racing indoors. So guys would walk over and just kind of marvel at what he was able to do in his pits, and that was kind of what made Kinwald. But kind of moving forward a little bit, we've talked about this in other videos, podcasts, and things, that we started racing these races where it was really easy to run a clay compound tire. Everybody, all the manufacturers kind of have their own. J Concepts is the gold compound that we use so successfully. Well, as the racing was developing in indoor competition, we started having guys, such as the Tessmans and all these guys that are really pushing the envelope. They wanted to experiment with different compounds other than just running clays. And you can see now that, the different companies have tires that are being used in competition on these indoor tracks that aren't necessarily the clay compound. So for us golds, then we have a compound called Aqua. The other manufacturers have other similar kinds of compounds. Well, what was made popular was that made these compounds work was a little bit of heat and a little bit of sauce. And guys were taking their tires into the parking lot, putting them in a bag and heating them up, just putting them in the sun, and they would heat up. And that was they'd bring them out and they'd run them. And this is just stuff that happens in competition. As long as it's an open tire format, things are going to progress and happen. And over time, so you look back at what Kinwall was doing, with his tires in the pits with his heat lamps, and you take it the next level. Guys were heating them out in either their rental car or just putting them out in the sun here in Arizona. I mean, it's 115 degrees in the parking lot. They get pretty warm. And then all of a sudden, Muchmore decided to just kind of re-release a touring car tire warmer kit, but with the ability to wrap the whole off-road tire. So now that's what we have, is this ability here to wrap the whole off-road tire and warm it up. And personally, this isn't the direction that I really prefer, but what I've noticed is it is a little more simple. If you are going to do this type of treatment and heat on your tires, what I've noticed is the guys that do have this, they put the sauce on, they just put the heaters on the tires, and for about 10 minutes before they run, they take them off, they bring them up there, and got a little warmth to the tire, and a little bit easier and a little bit more controlled, I guess you could say, when you go outside and you're heating them in the sun, or the guys were heating them on a drill or something like that. This kind of made it a little more simple, and guys that have kind of adjusted and using this method back in the pits, it looks a little bit more professional. It looks a little bit more structured, and you can actually change the way this heater works. There's like a quick set function. You just hit it, basically they start heating up, And I believe when I was talking to one of the drivers, you can actually control front to back on the amount of heat that you could have in the front or the back, but they usually just heat them the same amount and do it for about 10 minutes. They unplug it and put the car out there, and like it or not, this is something that's out there in the pit area, and Muchmore is making it available to us. And I'd say more than anything, it's made it a little more straightforward. Instead of guys having to do all these different things outside or back in the designated areas, and something they can just do in the pits, and it's a little more controlled, a little more professional, and it's a really nice unit. Many years ago we thought about doing the same thing, but we talked to Kinwald and the guys, and they thought it was something that was better to just kind of leave on the back burner, so to speak. But this was I think a really cool thing that Muchmore has. Like it or not, it's out there in the racing. As long as you're going to have open tires, you're going to have guys trying to push the envelope. And this kind of, to me, cleaned it up a little bit. Didn't make it so much of a science outside or with the drill. It made it just real easy. And guys are just 10 minutes on, take them off, hit the track, and they're racing. So guys that like the technical aspect is what this kind of appeals to. Guys that are a little bit more into the details of the car setup and racing indoors, you're going to see things like this, especially with the newer compounds. If you're on a clay compound, I don't really recommend that you need this. This isn't something that I think is needed. But if you're on some of the the latest compounds like the Aquas, and the manufacturers have other versions, I think it's something to check out. And if not, that's fine too. But just check them out, Muchmore. I think they had a nice product here brought to market. Joe Pillars and the guys wanted to make sure that it was just kind of an easy way to control it in the pits with their drivers, and Yokomo drivers using it this weekend, and then back at the 8-Skill Nationals, several drivers using it. It's really not a big deal. A couple minutes on the heater, and they're back out there on the track, and at the end of the day, still the best drivers usually win. But this is a nice little detailed product for that we show you here at the Summer Indoor Nationals.